Hello everybody, you're very welcome, good evening, welcome back to Chuck's Chats and a new kind of sideline development where we're having some fireside chats over pints in the President's Bar with a number of club grandees. I do feel a little bit like Tommy Tiernan on a show when somebody steps into the studio and you can see him looking going, oh my god, I have no idea who this is. So I'll be making some of it up, but bear with me. We're going to start this evening with Louis Magee. We're going to hear Louis' story. Louis is a doyen of Bective, club trustee. You're akin to the father of Bective. Louis, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Delighted to be here.
So you joined in 1965. That's 1 year less than I'm on this planet,
Yeah.
Louis.
Well, I suppose I used to come down here when I was very young, 8, 9, 10, and just be up on the terraces watching all the greats of Bective, Mick Cuddy and Brian Rigney, Frank O'Rourke, Fergie Keogh, Jerry Hardy. I was only a kid watching them and I just loved coming down here. Mm-hmm. Now I knew the family background, obviously, and I was, time went on. 65, I joined here as a schoolboy.
Okay.
And then, but really, 1968, left school, finished school, and came down here in August for the training session, 18 years of age, and the first person I met was Phil Murphy.
Okay.
And Phil brought me into the dressing room, introduced me. I remember him introduced me to Frank O'Rourke, Brian Rigney.
Probably slipped you some wine guns, Phil.
Yeah, I mean, he was fantastic, and we remained very close friends, mm-hmm. right through to his passing. But that was the start, and I had an absolutely wonderful year, my first year. It was special in many ways. I got my father back down here, the Major, because he hadn't been down that much. My mother hadn't been well and he just wasn't around, so now he was back. And I played on a third team that won every match during the season except the last 2 matches, which were finals. And John Broderick was captain, but it was an extraordinary side. It contained the likes of Brian Rigney, who had played for Leinster, final Irish trialist, Frank O'Rourke, Leinster, final Irish trialist, and here they were on the thirds in Bective. And the discipline was fabulous. We trained hard, we had a very good side. You know, throughout the season, many different players came in, like Des McDonald. But I think the pièce de résistance on the team was definitely the scrum half, who was the one and only Brian Muscles Conway.
Muscles.
And Muscles was sending out bullet-like passes at that stage. And don't let anyone think otherwise.
Okay. So I was looking at this, there's kind of a symmetry in your rugby life. You're born and raised in Clyde Road, down to Donnybrook, which is about 1 kilometre away.
Yeah.
You were teaching up in Marion, which is another kilometre away, and eventually you ended up in the IRFU, which is on the same road. So your whole life is encapsulated in nearly a 1 kilometre triangle in around Donnybrook and Ballsbridge.
It's true. I mean, living where I was, the family connection here, Marion College being so close, I went to school there, mm-hmm. and then went on to college, and then got a phone call, would I be interested in going back to teach there, do my HDip there, and I was delighted to, and I was thrilled to do it, and happy days.
So for a guy, I suppose, who's there's a generation, are you 4th generation, 3rd generation, Magee? Fifth.
Well, I'm the third.
You're the third, but we're on to the 5th
now. We're on to the 5th now.
With David Skid, sorry.
Well, with Louis, who's helping coach the first team, his young lad Dara now makes up the 5th, and then David's 2 lads, James and Louis. Hopefully they'll be playing here. Louis won his Junior Cup medal with Blackrock last year.
I saw that.
And he comes down to all the matches here, which is great. That. So
let's hope he brings
fingers crossed.
Let's hope he brings his friends. So
yeah.
if you were with us, and was it 68? You said you played your first games here.
My first game, yes, on the thirds, and I played on the thirds that season, and I also got a couple of matches on the first.
Okay.
Which was a fantastic experience because I remember being out in UCD. I was studying science in UCD. Saturday morning, one of the men out there behind the desk knew me and he said, "There's somebody looking for you on the call here, urgent call." It was Paddy O'Donoghue. Paddy wanted me down in Merrion Road to sub for the first. So I ended up in the second row with the Great Wigs.
The Great Wigs.
I was just 19 at the time.
We'll come to the Great Wigs.
So that was.
So you started at 19. You went on to 36, 37.
Yeah, I finished on the first team. Actually, I finished playing. Well, officially, I finished in April 1986 in Lansdowne Road against Lansdowne.
Okay.
And in that season, I had been coaching the thirds, playing with the thirds.
You were, yeah.
You know, I'd finished playing.
Semi-retired.
Semi-retired. But all of a sudden, I got the call. There was an injury. And I was thrilled. And actually, I played well. I remember that day well because as I was coming out of the dressing room, I ran straight into Moss Keane, who was now a spectator. And I can't actually tell you what Moss said, but it was basically, what the so-and-so hell are you doing here?
The great Morris Ignatius.
But he put it in slightly flowery terms.
Yes.
But he was a great friend of mine. And
a great character. Great
character.
You know, thank God there was no social media around when Morris Ignatius was playing. I had the pleasure of going on a 24-hour bender as a young lad at the Rugby World Cup in '91 over in Scotland when Finlay Calder took the head off Jim Staples.
That's right, yeah.
And I ended up on a plane and on a bus into town with Con Houlihan, who was my hero in terms of journalists and his prose and his writing.
And a member here.
And then we met Morris Ignatius in the Caledonian Hotel, and we had, I can't tell you what happened, but it was memorable. So for a guy who played so long, you must have won a lot of pots and a lot of medals in this club.
No, in fact, it's extraordinary. That first season set a pattern because we lost the two finals by 3 points each to Lansdowne and Terranure, which was a terrible pity because the team, it was a great team to play on. And I still think it was the best year I ever had in rugby when I look back. Then playing with I played in the first Leinster League final, the very first with Bective against Wanderers. Wanderers beat us. Cup final against St Mary's, a very, very good St Mary's side, and they just beat us in Lansdowne Road in April '74. Following December, I think, or January, we lost to Blackrock in the Leinster League final again. So it was just that.
Are you a bit of a Jonah, Louis?
I must obviously be, you know. But I'd love to have won a medal. The only medal I did win was I didn't make it onto the pitch. It was in Edinburgh in 2015 when Ireland won the championship. I was president, and I was presented with a medal by the team, from the team. Which was
was that crazy match where we were waiting on the England-France game.
We were up in the stand, chewing our nails, watching England and France, and watching France trying to
run the ball on their own line, when just kick it out and let us win
it. And it was a great day, a memorable day. Sweet Caroline was sung for ages.
Very well. There was no zombie, hadn't been invented yet. No. So you were captain. You were captain of this club 3 times.
Yeah.
And you were the centenary captain in '81, '82 as well.
That was the other final. We got to play Wanderers in the cup final in the centenary year, and we drew, and then we lost in the replay. We had a good chance, you know, in that match. We knew going into a replay against them, it was going to be difficult because they had 8 internationals on the side.
Okay.
8. I have a picture at home. It's me jumping in the line out, and I can see across the Wanderers side, and I picked out 8 internationals. Okay. So that's the way it was.
Okay, and then you got, so I suppose moving on from that, you got 17 Leinster caps between 73 and 79.
Yeah, I've played against Fiji was my first cap. John Rayfield and myself were both picked, and John got injured. There was a bit of politics going on at the time. I think the IRFU weren't too keen on John.
Because he was an English international.
I'm not sure. I know Rolly Meats, who was coaching Leinster, was very keen to have him, get him into the fold. He was replaced that day by a guy called Dave Barry, who was nearly as English as John was, as it turned out. But that was the start. And I had 17 caps. I mean, in a time when you played 3 interpros, we played Clonettley every year. And then I got the final trial in '79. I partnered Brendan Foley in the second row on the possibles against Morris Ignatius and Harry Steele.
Okay.
And
And a young up-and-coming Jim Glennon as well, was
Well,
he in the mix?
Jim, yeah, I mean, Jim's a great pal of mine. We played against each other an awful lot, and we played together a lot. We played for Leinster. I mean, we played together, and we had a couple of fine matches, particularly over in Wales, when eventually we managed. We were the first Irish team to beat a Welsh side over there in a long time. Leinster beat Clonettley. The year before, we were leading them, but the referee went on for 10 minutes.
He wasn't a South African referee.
He was a Welshman. And I met Phil Bennett about, I suppose about 15 years ago, and I reminded he remembered the match, and he remembered
the injustice.
He remembered dropping the goal, and he did. He was laughing. He said, "Yeah, he thought the match was never going to finish, but eventually he dropped the goal. They won that year. We won the following year. Okay. All in Wales, all in Stradley Park."
So unfortunately, that the final trial didn't lead. I mean,
no,
so Foley and Moss would have been coming off beating the All Blacks in '78.
Look, being honest about it, as a second row in those days, I'm not joking when I tell you my maximum weight was 14 3/4 stone.
But that was big in those days, do you know?
Well, I mean, when you're up against Moss, it wasn't, because Moss was well into the 17 stone. But that was the other side to that was that I loved line-out jumping. I was very good at it. I worked hard at it. It was a particular technique that I developed, and I knew it was a really good source of ball for the backs. And I was light enough, really,
that you could get up, because there's no lifters in those days.
I had a good spring, and I was able to get up off the ground.
Okay. So I suppose to close out your playing career, Bective tours. Did you do the Trinidad tour?
I went to Trinidad and Tobago in '76. We had a great tour there. It coincided, I think, with a bank strike here in Ireland. And
was Boff living in Trinidad at the time?
Boff was in Trinidad. Boff and the O'Farrell family did a huge amount of work in organising that, and we had a great trip there. It was probably... it was extraordinary. It was 3 weeks, really. We were there for 3 weeks because we went to Barbados as well. And when I think of it, like the matches, we played the matches in high humidity. I
played a game out there. I've been out there. Played a game out there.
We were totally unprepared for it. And of course, as soon as the matches were over, our view of rehydration was straight into the Pelican, into the pints.
Drink your body weight in pints.
And it was a great tour, and we had. Phil Murphy was there, so Phil...
All the lads played well.
Well, Phil hardly saw daylight, but he was as white coming back as he was going out. But it was the famous occasion when Phil always made friends wherever he went, didn't matter. I mean, and the locals took to him.
He was a gentleman. He adopted me when I came in here.
In the bar in the Pelican, there was a group of them, and they went in one day early in the morning, and they didn't emerge until the next morning, and Phil came out and looked round and just said, "What time does it get dark around here?"
He thought it was the same day.
So he was like that, but he was great, and it was a great tour. It was by that stage now I had family, and of course I had met Susan down here in 1969.
Out in the hall,
out in the hall out here.
And you're 50 years married?
We're 50 years married this year. We know each other 54 years, and at that stage, it was time to put tours behind me and spend some time with the family.
And try and mature a little bit.
Susan encouraged me to keep going, to keep playing, and I did. And but I wanted to get back down here and do something like when I joined. I always remember how much people gave to the club.
So you wanted to give back?
So I went back.
Like all of us do.
But that was great too, and some great characters, on the junior teams.
So that kind of segues nicely into you parked your playing career.
Yeah.
You want to give back, contribute to the club because it's like a family here.
It is a family.
It is a family. There's no question.
Bective is always, and it's a family, who will have quarrels and get on well with each other at times, fight with each other, but it's a family.
But it is a family.
And when the going gets tough, everybody gets behind you. So that's it.
So you became director of rugby. Was that a newly created position? You were director of rugby here in 91 to 94?
Mick Cuddy was there before me.
Okay.
And then I took over. That was around the time Mike Ruddock was
correct,
here.
Yeah.
And then Mike was brought back to Swansea. They wanted him back. and he went back. So yeah, I did that time, and it's interesting reflecting on it. I would probably do it differently, on reflection, but...
In what sense?
I think that the club at that stage wasn't prepared for
the AIL and
the
semi-professionalism.
We just hadn't got the structures. So I think before doing a job like that, I think I'd have to see the governance of the club being really watertight, and people understanding the roles and what you do and what you can't do and who you report to. It was in its infancy, if you like. Dennis Whelan was more or less club director.
Correct, yeah.
And he was very good, he was very good, but it just needed to be looked at much more carefully, and I think it is now. That's what I'm delighted to see it is. And but that was a great experience. And
so you cut your teeth in kind of in
yeah, and then
were you instrumental in the likes of getting Noel McQuilkin in then after Mike Ruddock left?
What happened there was we were thinking about coaching, and I had noticed in Northampton when we went over there was a coach there called Glenn Ross.
Yeah, New Zealander.
Yeah,
I was there.
Yeah,
we used to play them under lights on a Friday night up in Franklin's Gardens.
Yeah. So effectively what I did was I got in touch with John Rayfield, because he was back there in Northampton. I explained to him what I was thinking about, that we were looking for somebody. He spoke to Glenn Ross, and Glenn came with a name, Noel McQuilkin. Found out more about Noel, which was all very positive, because Noel was definitely a coach that had done all the badges in New Zealand. He wasn't one. At that time, one of the difficulties at that time was that coaches were appearing from New Zealand with all sorts of CVs, that if you went into them...
They were making uppy.
They were... yes, there was a lot of imagination went into them.
LinkedIn is full of that nowadays, Louis. Yes, people who are experts in the fields and disruptors. It's complete lies.
So we definitely knew that Noel was the goods.
Okay.
And he had coached King Country.
Correct.
Which would have been, a tight-knit community down there with the Meads brothers and everything else. So anyway, I asked him to come over, and we got him over. It was March, I think, and met him at the airport, and we got him fixed up and everything else, just to have a kind of a few days here to see. He saw the setup in the club. At that time, the seconds were playing better than the first. The first actually team he saw playing with the seconds, he thought, oh, they're good. And then he saw the first playing the next day, and they were... he said to me, they're not too hot. I said, no, I think
That's why we want you.
You're beginning to see what I'm talking about. So he came here. He always said to me he'd do 3 years. That was the... And then he did an extra year, which I always felt at the time... I was finishing up as a director of rugby. I'd actually finished. And I said to him, are you sure, Noel? And
the message can get lost when it's repeated year after year after year.
And then he went to Greystones for a while, which I don't think worked out. But
no, I was living down there.
He was a very, very good coach.
And he brought Kurt.
He brought Kurt in, and having Kurt here, having a player like that in the middle of the field, you could see from the word go.
He was like a player coach, Kurt.
Yeah, he was very good. But Noel was great. He could be cranky, He was a gruff New Zealander. He was, yes. But he came from, that background where when they get into rugby over there, particularly around King Country, it's tough going and you get on with it,
Well, he was a good club man, and Josie as well, so he had
Josie was a lovely lady.
Yeah,
she was a lovely lady, and I know that Susan and herself got on very well, and they... I felt for her because her father died when she was here, and she went back, and that was tough going for them. And tough to actually, leave home and try and come over here
to the other side of the world.
Try and make a few bob, and but I have to say it's interesting just to qualify about Noel McQuilkin. I spoke to Rolly Meats about him, and Rolly said to me, that man is a very good coach.
And Rowley, of course, was technical.
Bective had played Trinity, and he'd watched what was happening, and he said to me, that man is a very good coach. So
we got a good one. A good one.
Yeah.
Okay, and also just to finish on the McQuilkins, and I'm kind of still semi in touch on Facebook with Kurt. Noel also fulfilled a lifetime ambition for me. I came in here one day and he called me over and he said, "Meet Pine Tree." Right? And there was Colin Meads, and I was going, oh my. I actually went out and rang my old fella afterwards, going, "You're never going to guess who I just met." Yeah, Colin Meads.
Huge man.
Huge man. Wider than he was. Like, he wasn't actually tall, but he was just granite, even at that age. So, Bective President then, 97, 98, and then moved on into the political world. You moved into the Leinster branch as president there in 03 and 04.
Yeah, well, I took over. I took over from John Lyons. John Lyons became honorary treasurer of the IRFU. I moved into his position as club rep on the Leinster branch
in 03, 04.
Well, no, before that, and then in
you went out to the executive.
Yeah, in 03, 04, I became president of the branch.
Okay.
And then at the end of my year as president, I went up for election for the IRFU, which I was elected, and that started another pathway, if you like.
Absolutely, it did. You ended up being in, I think it was 2014, 2015, the third Bective President of the Union in the past 30 years, and the fifth in total.
Fifth in total.
No, I can't remember the other two, but I remember the Cud.
Yeah, Harry Trift.
My favourite story about Michael Cuddy, we were playing an AIL match up in Malone, and the juniors went up. Cuddy's young lad was playing on the under-9s or under-10s before the game. And he was a big kid, you know, in the minis, there's always one kid who looks like he's 15. Well, this is Cuddy's young lad, and he caught the ball on the wing and he ran from inside his own half up the wing with Cud running beside him, roaring him on. And the kid scored in the corner, and Cuddy turned around as sure as God and said, "His name is Cuddy," right, on the top of his voice.
Well, I'd say that's the fastest the Cud ever
ran. Well, the Cud, let's say, jogged or rolled up the touchline. So it was Mick Cuddy, and then it was John Lyons, John Who as he was called here, because everyone has a nickname in Bective, and then yourself. And you were president that great year when we won the Six Nations, both the men's and the ladies.
Yeah, they won the two. And it was a great year. I must say it was a fantastic honour. I was delighted because I always felt it was like the wheel turning. I was able to kind of acknowledge my grandfather. Because, and my granduncles, like my grandfather and my granduncles, my grandfather Louis, my granduncles Joe and Jim, all joined here in the early 1890s. You know, they were really good rugby players. And like Louis, 27 caps, 9 seasons, 9 threes, 27, scrum half, or out half, he'd do both. And then Joe got 2 caps, and then Jim never played rugby for Ireland, but played for the Lions. So with Louis.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and their photograph is in the
trying to think from
South African Museum.
Colin Tucker did that too, didn't he? He got capped for the Lions before he got capped for Ireland.
So, but they were of an age. They were Corinthian sportsmen. They played everything. They were athletes. They played cricket. But with Louis, the more I've read about him, the more I realised that he was a remarkable rugby player and a very intelligent rugby player. An intelligent man, by the way, too. I mean,
what do you mean by an intelligent rugby player?
He, on what I've read, that he began to, if you like, encourage the teams to think tactically.
Because there was no coaches back in those days. Captain was the
coach. And he worked a lot around. When they won the Triple Crown, he had done his homework. He had actually, through a friend in Wales, picked up a huge amount of information about the Welsh team, and particularly their backline. And that won the match for them.
He was a spy deeply embedded in enemy territory.
He had his spies over there, and he knew, and he built a match, the tactics around that. And when and since subsequently reading about him, and then he went on. At that stage, he was studying veterinary here in Dublin, and he decided to go to London. He wanted to learn more about surgery, because he had ideas about veterinary surgery.
Okay.
And he went to London, and he was founder member of London Irish. He's the first international out of London.
And there's
Irish.
and I was aware that there was
Yeah.
a Magee connection in London Irish.
So he was
as well.
there. He captained the side the second year over there, and like London Irish, Madame, it's a great club now. It's still a great club. People get a little bit confused.
Yeah, the professional franchise is gone.
The
but
professional
the club
is there, but the club itself is hugely energetic and well run.
I went on a schoolboy tour there in the Christmas of '81, where we played 2 matches over there when I was in school.
It's marvellous. So I was just glad, going back to what you're asking me, being president, I felt as though in a certain way I was honouring my grandfather.
And that leads into a great story, the veracity of which you can confirm or deny. Yeah. But there is an apocryphal story of, there was a collage on the wall here to the history of all the Magees. And the Major took the hump one day and took it home with him.
He did.
And he put in his will, I have heard, that would not go back up until you were president of the club. And it did, is that correct?
Right. Well, it's known as the Illumination. It was here, hopefully it'll be back again. It was presented to my grandfather by the club here when Ireland won the Triple Crown, when he captained it. And it's a remarkable bit of history when you read it and when you look at the characters and the locations in it. Clongowes is in it.
Fine school.
Yeah, the RDS is in it. Now, Leinster, I was at a meeting when there was great discussion that Leinster would be the first team to play in the RDS. And I was able to put my hand up and say, sorry,
that's happened before.
That's not correct. Bective actually played in the RDS in the 1890s because they were looking for grounds. And it's in the Illumination, you can see it. And yes, so my father, in the latter stages of his life now, he was getting a bit grumpy, and it was understandable, he wasn't terribly well. But he took down, Frank O'Neill was the steward here at the time.
I remember him, yes.
And poor old Frank was wetting himself when he saw the Major coming in here and nearly taking the wall down with the thing. But he took it home, and yes, it was at home, it was in his flat, and then I heard that it was in the will. And but when I was president, the day I was brought in as president here, I brought it back, and it now belongs to Louis, who's out there at the moment,
coaching the first,
helping to coach the first.
That's a great story. So, the president of the union. I've always wondered, and I'm not trying to be antagonistic, but is that a titular role or is it a hands-on role? And do you need to be a Machiavelli, or do you just need to run through your year?
You make up your own mind. I'm a firm believer that when you're president, in any situation, that you're there as an ambassador. And I built my role
as an ambassador for Irish Rugby.
Because, in effect, I had, through my years working on the union, I had been through the committees, I had chaired committees, I had done all of that. So in terms of the work and what I felt I could contribute to Irish rugby, I had done that part of it, for good or bad, whatever. And when the year came round to be president, I knew that my role was to represent Irish rugby. Now, it was marvellous, it was interesting, but no matter where I went, I wasn't Louis Magee from Leinster or Louis Magee from
Bective Rangers.
I was Louis Magee from Bective Rangers, always, everywhere. And that was the nicest thing for me. That was the best thing of all for me, and I was delighted with that. But no, I feel, now it's up to every president to make his own decision on that, but the way it's run now, the IRFU, with good governance and the committee structures and so on, you just have to oversee things at times. Look, rugby is an extraordinary, the administration of rugby can be quite interesting at times, and there's no doubt that politics comes into it. And as Jim Glennon, my good friend, always said to me, Louis, there's more politics in rugby than there is in politics.
In Leinster House.
And he was in Leinster House.
Yes.
But there'll always be little bits and pieces that you have to deal with. But no, it was a wonderful experience. And another part of it that I really enjoyed was working with the staff, because I had never really worked with staff like that before. I was a volunteer. working with professional staff
paid
in the
staff,
union.
career
And
staff.
I learned so much from them, and I really enjoyed working with them. And I think they enjoyed working with me because I didn't interfere. They would come to me for advice on different things, and we talked through things, but they made decisions or brought decisions up to the committee, and so on. But that was a highlight.
And we have a great Bective Ranger in there now as Chief Commercial Officer, one Pádraig P. Power.
Pádraig has done great work.
Pádraig, who was best man at my wedding in '97.
Oh, my goodness. Well, I mean, he's been, Pádraig has done great work. And I mean, that end of it, the sponsorship end of it, the commercial marketing, my goodness.
Must be a behemoth of a
It's a huge role. And whenever I go away with the Irish team or anything like that, and the sponsors are there, you realise how important it is to them.
Mm-hmm.
Like they will turn on, like after the match in Paris there a few weeks ago when we lost New Zealand, we're back in the hotel, and Pádraig was there and the sponsors, and it was the sponsors who turned around and said, we want to say a few words here. We want to express our gratitude to the IRFU, to the Irish team, to the players, to Andy Farrell, to Johnny. There was no kind of, we've lost a match. No.
It's great to hear that they're not just giving you the check and nothing else.
They're hugely involved.
They're interlinked with the team.
They're hugely involved, and you have to remember that their contribution financially is massive.
Mm-hmm.
It's very important.
Okay. Look, Con Houlihan, who we mentioned, and you rightly pointed out, was a member of Bective.
Yeah.
Con was very much a hero of mine. I don't have many heroes, and there's a well-known saying, "Don't meet your heroes." But Con was the opposite of that, because I thought he was a fabulous man. Yeah. Con once said that journalism is asking the difficult questions. The rest is just PR. So I'm going to practice my inner journalism here. I'm not trying to be Ewan McKenna, but do you think, an honest question, do you think the IRFU and Mr. Nusafora, who I understand has a very difficult role, right, and it was probably best at the time that we brought in an outsider to make some difficult decisions, because all the provinces are still parochial and tribal.
Oh yeah.
But do you think the union has kind of semi-abandoned domestic rugby?
No, in no way. I have to say, through my time in the IRFU and subsequently the domestic game, as we call it, which incorporates so much. It's the clubs, it's the schools, it's the women's game, it's the sevens game too, in part. It's a huge part of Irish rugby, and the IRFU have continually tried to make sure that the clubs are safe, that they can develop. Now, if you go back about 20 years, I think it's fair to say a lot of clubs, probably including ourselves, wasted money.
Ideas of above our station, maybe?
But got into different, we're very lucky here now in this club. We're financially very stable. Hard work done by the members here. And I like to call it not the volunteers. We have members here who pay their subs and volunteer to do their work. And they've done it here. And we're coming back now to this place where I think is very important. We're a strong club again. But if you look at the clubs around Ireland during that period, they went through a huge amount of money into serious debt. With the result that the IRFU were being blamed for this. I never agreed with that. I think people have to make decisions. Clubs had to make decisions at that time, and a lot of money was spent when clubs hadn't got that money. Now, the IRFU have worked very hard, not just in terms of putting finance on the table, saying there's a check or things like that. I think it's far more than that. I think it's about a complete picture of developing a structure within which you have coaches, and you have strength and conditioning coaches, and you have all of that can go out to the clubs, that can go around the provinces, which has happened, and to develop all these younger coaches coming through. And we see it here in Bective now. We see it happening. David Nusafora had a job to do, and his view, he probably the clubs would have been over there as far as he was concerned. He was looking at a particular pathway.
The pyramid with the Irish team at the top provinces.
What you have to understand is that the pyramid, the top of that pyramid, is the cash cow, and the money cascades down. And if you want to be honest about it, in terms of finance, there's probably only one province capable of making money, and that's Leinster. Munster are in debt, Ulster are in debt, Connacht are in debt.
Munster's debt tied up 9 million outstanding on Thomond Park.
And that's not me reflecting badly on them. It's not. It's
just a statement of fact.
It's a statement of fact. So the finances, when you read the finances and you see that the IRFU
last year's financial report, sorry to cut across you. 75 million for the professional game costs and elite player development. Domestic game 13 million.
Yeah. Well, you see, if you look at the professional game now and you ask, do you want your provinces to be playing at a level that's going to bring the players through to the national side, to a World Cup, to be able to play as well as they've done in the last 10 years, you have to have a structure in place that is as professional as it can be. And I think in Ireland now, as Gregor Townsend acknowledged recently, we probably have one of the best structures in the world.
To be fair, I would agree, yes.
And that's for producing the professionals.
And we're the envy of other unions around the world, yes.
So I think from a domestic point, just looking at it around the country, I think clubs now are much more settled. They know their boundaries, they're
balancing the books.
They're definitely balancing the books. There's no doubt about that. And hopefully that will continue.
Last piece on this. I know I'm like a dog with a bone. The Victor Meldrew in me, the Your Club, Your Country draw. So Pádraig gets fantastic prizes from our sponsors and he's excellent at doing that. But in effect, is it not saying to the clubs, well, you fund yourselves, whatever you can get out of your members and the tickets, you take that money away?
I mean, the clubs have already been funded. This is an addition to it. This is a way of saying, look, we're giving you the money there, but all you have to do is go and sell the tickets. And I think that's fair. I think it's fair. It's like whenever finance and all of this comes into play, it's always very difficult.
Contentious.
It's contentious. But I think the model in Ireland, the only area that I worry a bit about now, when I look at it here and I see we're in the Junior League, Leinster A League, and we're playing teams, and every weekend there's a vibrancy around the matches. You've two teams playing, 1 o'clock, 2:30 or 3 o'clock, buzz around the club. That's very positive. It's a great atmosphere. And when I look at the bottom league in the All Ireland League, I say, God Almighty, I don't know whether we want to be travelling here, there, and everywhere. I worry about the league as it's structured. I think
the AIL.
Yeah, I think the AIL. 2 divisions, yes, maximum in my opinion, but then a more, not provincial leagues as such, but leagues that will take into account travel and so on, and that if you are maybe regional, I think is probably the word.
There's a fair amount of truth in what you say. I remember being here we played Monkstown, which is always our big game. We had 150 people. This is Christmas last year, 150 people for the dinner. There was about 1,000 people out on the terraces. We all came into Bective, places, people hanging out of the rafters. It was brilliant. It was like the good old days, right? Except people need to be careful. I worked with a guy who, on his retirement, gave a great speech when he said, people talk about the good old days. Well, for the younger people, let me tell you, the good old days are right now. But afterwards, there was an AIL match where Wesley were playing one of the Munster teams, I can't remember, and there was 2 men and a dog out there watching it.
It's something that the more I look at it, the more I just wonder. I've seen it with some clubs that have been promoted into the AIL and have done so on very, very good seasons, and yet as soon as they hit the AIL, they're gone.
It all falls apart.
They just collapsed.
Well, it's huge expense in travel, if nothing else.
Travel and players not wanting to travel. It's just, it's in the mix.
Okay, so Bective, let's get back to why we're here. The wonderful Bective Rangers.
It is.
So you've seen loads of change Yes. Sum up the changes since you came in the 60s?
Well, look, I mean, I'll tell you quite honestly, and I've said this throughout the last 2 to 3 years. In my mind, the club is in the best position it has ever been in my lifetime. And I mean that 100%. Jack McAvoy came in as chairman of the executive, which I thought was a great appointment, not just because of Jack, but because of the position itself. It took away the pressure off the president. Mm-hmm. It was one of the things I had talked about, and I'd also talked about governance, because I firmly believe that throughout the years here, if there was one area that worried me and I wasn't comfortable with, I felt that governance wasn't adhered to throughout the years here.
Specifically on what area? Without pointing the finger?
No, I think just generally there was, with governance you have people in position who are put in position to carry out particular roles, and if situations arise where their particular area is overlooked or perhaps decisions made without their agreement, mm-hmm. Well then you have a problem. And I think we had a problem here for a long number of years. I'm honest about it when I say about Bective now. I think it is in the best position I've ever seen it. I just look at the vibrancy in the club, the energy in the club, the minds, the younger people who are working in the club now, business people with good ideas for the future. And I look at this clubhouse now, and it's a pleasure to come into it. It was last Saturday we played Monkstown, and I brought Mick Coughlin along. Now Mick was a member here back in the 70s and 80s, and he hadn't been here for a while. And he just thought, my God, it's fantastic. Martin O'Sullivan, my successor as president of the IRFU, was here, and he just said afterwards, this club is buzzing. He said, this is a fantastic job.
It is, and the job here was brilliant because we used our members volunteered to leverage their own particular skill sets. You Paddy O'Brien, the builder,
fantastic.
Mola architecture, Brian Kavanagh on the engineering front. There's so many people.
You see, that's the contribution I'm saying, an incredible contribution from members who pay their sub and yet give up their expertise.
To paraphrase JFK, ask not what your club can do for you, ask what you can do for your club.
And I think the strategic review that took place has been very beneficial, because it has brought people out who were maybe just a bit on the sideline, not wanting to get involved, and then all of a sudden they saw the energy, and it went on, and then you had a number of them chairing up, facilitating, chairing up different groups, pushing forward, Clubhouse being one of them, finance, rugby, the whole lot. And then, all of that being brought together. And I think Sinead Jackman then bringing it all together. And, there's Byrne outside with the first team now. And that's lovely to see, that even family connection.
And it's a family. I always explain to people, this is a family. But you spoke about energy, which I think is a great adjective to explain, because there is an energy. And look, I'm a lapsed member. I went out to Greystones, got married, had 3 daughters, reared them. I'm now back, and there is a metamorphosis happening here. We're nearly Phoenix-like, coming out of the ashes and a rebirth of Bective.
Well, it's on its way. It's going to take a lot more work. It's going to be difficult, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Okay.
I think that we look each year to the first team and what kind of team we're going to have and so on. I think the club has to look very carefully now, and it's beginning to, there's no doubt, at the underage. Mm-hmm. Now the minis are fantastically run. I mean, I came down here last Sunday.
Richie Maybury, Paul Hatton doing great jobs.
Superb, and it's they see the energy of the kids and the enthusiasm and wearing the Bective jersey and socks and everything. It's fantastic. But then we don't have an under-20s. Okay. I think that we need to look more carefully at further down. We need to look, say, around under-17, which I think is already happening from what I can gather.
I believe Weewar and Emmett are working on behind the scenes.
And a few others working on it. And I think that's where we have to start, to build up an underage system here that will bring them through 2 under-20s. So as we're not going out every year trying to get somebody for under-20s, you bring them through. Now you won't bring them all through though, but if you get a group of them from a school, you get 1 or 2, you'll get 7 or 8.
Back in my day, Kevin O'Farrell was the hook to get Clongowes in here.
Yeah.
He was under pressure from the BOF.
Yeah.
You go to Bective or you don't come home.
Yeah.
Probably the same that you had with the Major.
Well, no, funny enough, the Major never forced me. I made a decision myself. But if I go back to my grandfather, he was Clongowes. So he was the one that attracted all the players in the early 20s and 30s into Bective from Clongowes, and probably Belvedere as well, the Jesuit connection at that time.
Yeah.
So it's there, but that's the area I think we really, really have to look at very carefully. Because if we don't, we'll be going out every year trying to get an under-20 side together. That's not going to work. That's not going to be a firm foundation for bringing players through to senior level.
It's probably the country, where we need to go at. The Clongowes in Newbridge and Birches tapping Newbridge, the Ross Grays.
Yeah.
This is probably, in my opinion, the most non-D4 club in D4 because it's full of coaches. I'm a coachie.
But you can see it at the moment. I mean, the under-17 crew are coming together. There's a big Blackrock influence there. So it's tapping into that. But that is something anyway. That's my view on that.
And we hope your grandson...
Yeah, I'd love to. I mean, I know he loves coming down here. He's on the senior squad now, even though he's in 4th year. So all I want for him and for his brother James is that they enjoy their rugby. Really, I don't mind where they play, but I told them that if they go anywhere else, they'll be disinherited.
Good man. Well done. So let's talk about, we talk about family here, and it is a family and it's full of characters. I mean, I can remember trying to explain to my wife about how, I was in the club. Who were you with? I was with the badger, the dog, the trout, the squirrel. Everybody in Bective has a nickname. There's people in here, my nickname is Chuck, and there's people in here who have no idea what my name is whatsoever. But this place is full of characters. Regale us with some of the characters.
Well, the characters, I mean, the ones that come to mind to me are, there was a group which we always refer to as the last of the summer wine. It included my father, Harry Durnan, who was Mick O'Loughlin's uncle, Reggie Callan, and Mickey Ford.
And they had their corner.
And they would have discussions. And sometimes
they were like the Senate.
Sometimes a little bit heated, but they would have their discussions. And there was one occasion when my father and Harry were up at the bar and they were getting into a very heated discussion where they were now kind of pushing each other in the chest. And Mick Sweeney was looking at it and he says,
"This is going to go off here.
Major Magee moves like a butterfly and stings like a bee."
Muhammad Ali.
And that took the steam out of the whole thing. But they're the sort of characters, like it was lovely to watch. It was lovely to listen to them because they had stories. Harry could talk forever. My father the same. And they loved the club here. They were loved by the members. But they were last the summer wine. There was one occasion when they decided that they would go down to see Jack Guiney, who had now moved to Wexford. Jack, that we honoured recently, was captain. And Jack was very fond of them, great friend of my father's. So they planned this journey down, which was to get the train in Pierce Street, I think. I left my father in anyway. So the 4 boys met there, that suited them, and onto the train they got. But unfortunately it was the wrong train.
They went north instead.
No, they went into the sidings in Dunleary. So Plan B came into operation, which was, where's the nearest pub? Yes. Now Jack Guiney was waiting in Wexford. He'd everything lined up for them. But anyway, they
and the boys were
rattled up into Dunleary and obviously spent the day there in the pub, because that evening I got a phone call from a quite irate publican to wonder, could I ever
come and collect your...
and get these 4 fellas out of this place. And that's what they were like. And
the stories are great. I mean, everybody has stories. A lot of them are non-repeatable, as I said. Isn't great there was no social media back in our days. I did hear tell of a story where we were playing was it a Cup or a league match against Wesley, and Al was captain, Al Maroney, and he was a bit fed up that the dressing room was flat before.
I was captain.
Al was playing.
Al was playing. Yeah, Al was playing, and
you were in the second row with
I was
your
in the
friend
second row
Bjorn.
with my great pal from Norway, Bjorn Loftrod, an immensely strong man, a great man. Still watches all the matches online.
On the live stream.
Yeah,
yes,
live stream. But anyway, we had a very good season. We were playing very well. We were unbeaten coming into this match against Wesley. But we had lost the weekend before against Gary Owen out here in the Jerry Highland Trophy, and we played poorly. So I came in here to the selection meeting, selectors in those days, and I had a difficult job holding the team together, but I did it on the basis that it was a one-off bad result.
And we'll give them a second shot.
So during the week, John Power rang me and said, I think we need to get a bit of something going in the dressing room. So we knew that Wesley, big pack, big arses on them, all the farmers from down Protestant farmers.
Protestants, from Wicklow, Wexford, yes.
We had decided that we wouldn't ruck any ball, we wouldn't maul any ball, we'd ruck all day, ruck, going in low. So anyway, the build-up starts in the dressing room, and I turn around and I hit Bjorn a box. And he turns around and he hits me a box, but he nearly put me out in the first pitch. And with that,
that set the tone.
The dressing room erupted. And all I can remember is Maroney jumping up on the bench in his own thing. Jeez, this is great. And we were boxing. We went out, I'd say Wesley, who were favourites to win the league that year, didn't see the ball for 30 minutes.
Because you were just on
We
fire.
were at them.
Okay.
And it was great, yeah. But it was only something you could do once in a while. You know, you couldn't be
you
doing that
can't
every
do
week.
it every week. Yeah.
No, but it worked.
Okay. And if we talk about Bective, so we talked about Bective the past, and we're in a good place now, and you're absolutely right. And the reconditioning and the rebuilding of the club is great. What do you hope for Bective of the future? Where would you hope to see us going, or what's your vision?
I mean, if the All-Ireland League still stays there, that we get back into it. I mean, I think that is, yes, that's part of what we have to move to. I don't think we'll do that, funny enough, until we have a much stronger underage structure coming through. That's just a view. Maybe I'm wrong. I sincerely hope we can keep the same energy in the club, maintaining the members who are working so hard for us, that they can continue to do that with their vision. I was so impressed by the vision of some of the members, thinking ahead, and that's where we are now. We're in a different mode now. Let's forget about the history for a minute. History is important.
Yeah, and respect the history, but we need to move forward.
Yes, we have to move forward in all sorts of different things. And I hear discussion about the jersey at times and about this and that. Get on with it. The kids today don't want to see the jerseys that the lads wore 10 years ago. They want something different. The branding of the club, very important. These are all things that are being talked about. I love to see them being pushed on. I love to see evolution within the club.
It's said
and by the way, the evolution started when this club was in the 1890s and so on. I read back through the minutes of this club from about 93 into about 1904 or 5. I was given it to read. And I really wanted to read to see what my grandfather was thinking and what my granduncles were doing. And it was very interesting. It wasn't just about them, it was businessmen and their ideas. You think about professionalism. Leicester wanted to play Bective, wanted Bective to come over. Bective said, yeah, we'll go over. How much are we going to get? This went on for about 6 months until Bective got the readies. And then they went over and played Leicester. And then they played Northampton. But things have moved on now. We're a very different club now, as I sit here in the room with you, Chuck,
than we were even
enjoying this conversation.
10 years ago.
Then even less than that. It's a joy for me now, and I'll say this: I wasn't comfortable coming down here for a while because I felt maybe because when you're on the IRFU, you're in the Leinster,
Yeah.
I did say at the time that Bective is a very democratic club. They give out to you when you're here, and they give out about you when you're not here. So that's democracy, probably in a certain way. But I see a different club.
You're right about evolution, Louis. I mean, it's said that the secret to change is not to focus all your energy on fighting the past, but on building the new. Yeah. And I think with the seeding program that went on here last year, that was brilliant. And the amount of change that was being proposed, and I was asked my opinion, I said, do it all. Do it all and do it now, because we have to keep evolving and building for the future.
Absolutely.
And the kids are our future. Yes, and we have a responsibility, as I said last week, to deliver them a club that will bring it into the future, and then it'll be their turn. We've had our go, then it's their club, and hopefully we leave it in a good position.
Yeah, exactly.
So what keeps you coming back? Yourself, you know, I see yourself in Carroll down all the time. What keeps you coming back here?
I just loved the club here. It was great last Saturday, Susan coming down here and the family, we all collected, and we had the Arrigo boys here. You know John?
Yes,
John, my cousin.
They were at the dinner, and Mick Shilly spoke well. Yeah,
and you know, that is just. I just love the club here. I always have, and I've been. You know, I love the mix. I love the characters, and every so often the little altercations that take place, which are great, and they add to the history of the club and things that go on. Some of them you can't talk about or write about, but anyway.
Well, what do you think is our USP as opposed to any other club? What's different about us?
It's always been the mix of individuals here. Like when I was playing,
doctors and dockers.
Yeah, and different. You did mention it earlier. We were like a provincial club in Dublin 4. We've always been like that. Mm-hmm. I mean, when I go back to the teams that I played on, particularly, say if I take the teams that played in finals, there would only been about 2 or 3 of us from Dublin. And that was the way always.
Yeah, par for the course.
That was par for the course, and long may it continue. I think it's a wonderful thing to have the mix of young fellas coming in, even on the first team at the moment. The mix, you know.
There's a huge mix. There's a huge mix, but there's a great sense of. So I'm only really involved in the last 12 months.
Yeah.
I'd be quite critical, right? I'm a bit of a Victor Meldrum, a middle-aged pain in the ass, but those guys, genuinely, there is a bond amongst them, which sometimes you can't manufacture that. It's either there or it isn't there. And I think, you know, they're a lovely bunch of lads, and they've bought into Bective. So,
well, I spoke to them before they played the year before, the semi-final the year before.
Against Estonians. Estonians?
No, the match before that.
The All Blacks, Connemara All Blacks.
And I just thought it was an opportunity to explain to them the background here at the club, which I think they bought into. They were pleased. I just tried to. Well, first of all, I wanted to say to them, well done, and to thank them, because they were part of the re-energy here. You know what they had done that season, getting into the playoffs, and I did then explain to them the background. You know.
Yeah, and that there is 400 or 500 members who are living their lives vicariously through those 15 that go on the pitch. Yeah. So, in a 58-odd year career lifespan in Bective, you've come across some players.
Yeah.
Who is the best player that you ever encountered in Bective during your time?
Without a shadow of a doubt, Dr. Byrne
Wiggs.
Yeah.
Wiggs.
I was so lucky as a young lad. I mean, I was only 19 when I played with him first, and then the following season I was on the senior cup team, 1970 I think it was, my first cup match against Terranure. I always remember him in the dressing room. You know, there was banging heads and everything was going on, and he just pulled me aside, looked at me, he said, Louis, he said, you win the line out.
I'll mind the rest.
I'll take care of the rest.
Very good.
I learned what he meant about 20 minutes into the match, when I'd been upended in the line-out. Actually upended, I came down head first, bang, and he said he's there looking down and says, don't worry about that, I'll take care of that.
That's been noted, as Anthony Foley would have said. That's been noted.
About 5 minutes later it was taken care of. But he was a wonderful man.
And at that stage he'd have been well developed in his career, because Wiggs played for the Lions in 59 in New Zealand and Australia.
He got his first cap for Ireland against Australia in 1958, November 58. I was at the match as a young 9-year-old probably at that stage. And then he was then the Six Nations 59. Then he was picked for the Lions, and he was picked really on merit. I mean, he got injured early on the Lions tour,
but they kept him out there because it was so long.
And he then played in the last Test match, which they won. The Lions won,
having been cheated out of the one before in New Zealand.
Noel McQuilkin told me that Colin Meads rated him a better second row than Willie John McBride.
That's good praise.
And that would add up, because when he went to South Africa with the Lions in '62, he led the Lions pack there. And
he wasn't a physically huge man, Winks.
Oh, he was very physically strong. I mean, he was very, very strong, natural strength. I mean, when he went into a ruck, I mean, it just exploded. You know, he had that massive natural strength, as well as, I'm sure, he worked on it too. But he was a wonderful man, and a most engaging man, a lovely man to talk to. You'd never know he played 35 times for Ireland, captained Ireland.
No notions.
And he's still going well out in Skerries. I just, funny enough, that just looking at the modern player, the nearest to him I've seen in a long time, and I think he's the one who will be the nearest to him, is this young McCarthy lad in the second row.
Yeah, Joe McCarthy for Leinster, and he's only a child. He
reminds me a lot of Wiggs in that natural big strength, where into a kind of a maul situation, things start happening.
Okay.
But he was, Wiggs. I just think when you look back in the history of the club here, we've had the Lions players through the years, but an outstanding.
He was the best in your time. So I suppose okay, and leading on from that then. And it may not be, but who's the biggest influence, or who had the greatest? Was that Wiggs as well, or who had the greatest influence on you as a person in your Bective career?
Certainly he would have, but without a doubt, Dr. PJ Smith.
PJ, yes, yeah. So UL, Thomond College, and then UL.
An amazing individual.
A visionary.
An absolute visionary. The quietest of men, understated. Absolutely. When you look at the moment, in the provinces and in the Irish setup, you have the strength and conditioning and the all these particular individuals now working so hard and so so professional and good at what they do. PJ Smith was the one who laid the foundations for all that. Mm-hmm. If you look at Declan Kidney, Sullivan, the coaches, all these coaches. Jason Cowman was there now, the Irish team and all that.
They were all trained by PJ.
They were all trained. I mean, he's a legend. He's a legend within that. But when he was here in Bective, he brought to Bective that his mindset of preparation, training, commitment.
The 5 P's, prior preparation prevents poor performance.
He'd come down here with the list, he'd have it on an envelope, what was going to be done, as well as a bag of bananas and fruit, which he'd be eating. But everything was prepared. It was the first time I came across anyone like that. Mm-hmm. But he went on, his influence here in Thomond College and then UL, and in the States and in the United States, massive. But he's somebody that I would put up way up there.
Right up there. Okay, interesting. Look, Louis, we could talk all evening. Yeah. Unfortunately, some of our members have the attention span of a goldfish, so we probably need to bring this to a close. I feel I should be like Eamon Andrews, handing you a big red book and saying this is your life, but we're not going to do that. I'm going to end with a bit of culture, and to quote Othello, and I think it's very apt in terms of you and what you've done for Bective and for Leinster and for Ireland. I've done the state some service, and they know it. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed reliving your career.
And thank you, Chuck. And by the way, thank you for the work you're doing now. You're like Raymond Glendenning in the old days now. We have you on the radio every Saturday.
I'm sure people are sick of listening to me. I'm wondering who he is.
No, you bring a lovely mix to it, which is very important.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And thanks for tonight.
Okay, thanks Louis. Lovely talking to you. And that's a wrap.